get a chance to finish this last night. I apologize. Had some company come over. What we're going to try to do is set this horn in such a way and remove the exact amount of the elevators, then line up our hinge pockets. So I'm lining up the edges of the stab now. I'll lay the horn in here and I can get an idea. Okay, now we want to get a 90-degree triangle on this. So we're going to remove this amount of it. That's the amount we're going to remove, and we're going to save that piece and make the fillet. Neat little trick you might want to use, using that piece for the fillet. Saves all that carving. At the end of the plane, when you're really not in the mood for carving, you'll just have that piece right in place, run the fillet right back over it. Real neat way to do it if you've never seen that done before. When you're doing a foam plane, you've got the fillets already right in your hand here. No reason not to use them. Okay, so we're going to take this over to the Dremel saw and just saw this off. Now you want to leave these rough for right now, these two middle pieces, and I'll tell you the reason why. Right now, we want to just glue these together. We're just going to glue this together with white glue. This is going to be our fillet. And again, we'll have to carve and sand this to fit, of course, but this will be pretty much the shape. And if we can't get it to fit good to our satisfaction, then we'll just carve a piece of wood up using this for a template. Okay, after that dries, we'll work on it. Now that's the two little pieces that we just cut away. Now we should have two elevators that fit right up there. And we should have the exact shape of the horn. Oh yeah. For a change, we got it right. Now I'm holding these together. I just lined them up on a nice flat table to make mirror images. Now I want to double check that I don't have one a little bigger than the other. I've got these two angles at 90 degrees. I sure don't want to have one elevator, even a 32nd of an inch, bigger than the other. That'll cause some crazy trim problems. Okay. I'm also going to check that I didn't change the stay up here. Okay. Even though we made mirror images, I like to go back and check that we got the right numbers. Oh yeah, we were close. Okay. Now we're going to put the edge on for the horn. We're going to have to use some 5-minute epoxy if we have some up here. Aha, the man has no 5-minute epoxy. We might have to use white glue now. We have no epoxy left. Oh yeah, there we go. Yup! Okay, that's just jaws of 5-minute. Let that drip down. Okay, now the material I'm going to use is 64th plywood for making the edge on. It bends one way, but doesn't really want to bend the other way. Well, I want this way, the way that it doesn't want to bend, to be the wrong way. Okay, so it's bending this way. I want to have the strength in this direction. So what I'm going to do is trace this part out. This is 64th plywood for anybody that doesn't know. It's O-Pee-Chee wood. Okay, there's the little piece I want to have. And that we just cut out with scissors. Leave a little bit extra on there. Alright, so step one is I'm going to take this piece and glue this on the end here with 5-minute and let it dry. We'll do that off camera to save some tape. I've got those little plywood pieces glued on, 64th plywood onto both edges now. And I'm just hitting them with a hairdryer to kind of speed up the drying. I want to get these horn mounts made up before I go to sleep tonight. That glass can be drying now and the horn mounts. Now you can't use CA up on the foam, of course, unless you have that UFO foam, glue that attaches the foam. So I got to sit through about a 10-minute wait here. The hairdryer kind of makes the epoxy sink in a little better too, get a better grip here, especially up on the end grain. Then for sure, what I'm going to do is sand the edge of this down with a Dremel drum, and then harden up the edge with a little bit of CA when this whole mount is done. This is a super nice little way of mounting horns. Because most people like to mount them the traditional way, like they show you on a Magnum kit or whatever, but this is a nice lightweight way to do it. Alright, we'll put this aside to dry for 5 minutes and get on with something else. And what I'm doing is I'm putting a drop of oil on the hinge. I'm going to get ready to do hinges. While that 5-minute epoxy is drying, I'm going to let some oil soak into these hinges. So when we actually glue them in, we're not going to have the epoxy sticking in there. I like to glue them with epoxy. Some people do with hot stuff. Okay, another thing too is we're going to take the Dremel tool. You see, I'm going to try to shine a light on this. See how flat that is? I'm going to try to put some scratches in this with the Dremel tool, roughen it up so the epoxy gets a better grip. This won't slide out. I always put some little lines, and we'll see. This is what one looks like stock. These are these black IM hinges. So I'm just going to go through these, and I'm using tough oil, lube it number 8. Although penetrating oil is probably just as good. I like to get a little bit of oil on there. I want to do the oil first before I actually, this is a needle oil. I think they use this for HO trains. Get that oil work in there. This way you don't get a lot of epoxy holding it in. It's going to be 6 hinges in the tail, so I got to do 6 of them. And boy, if there's one thing I remember from years ago, you get a hinge like this that clicks. See, it goes click. There's a rough spot right on the edge here. Just sand it off and it'll stop clicking. Take care of that before we go any further too. Some of them are nice. You got to go through a pack of hinges. Not all of them are really good. Some of them have that click, which I don't like. A little drop of oil worth its weight in gold when we start putting epoxy around these hinges. See, this one clicks too. I'm going to have to de-click this. Right here is where it's clicking. Okay, it's good. You might want to make a little tool like this. This is a tool. I don't know if you can see this now. This is a tool for doing IM hinges. Let's see what the cross section of this looks like. And it'll sand the hinge pockets right in. You just make it up with plywood and balsa wood. Now what I'm doing, I don't know if you can see this, I'm clipping hinges down. I'm just clipping them down so they don't go into the foam. They're only going into the wood as far as the spar goes in, the leading and trailing edges. I measured that off. I don't want them going in and crashing into the foam and squashing it all up. That's one of the ways you get ripples in the final sheeting. If you clip them down to the exact size, then we're going to put them grooves like I told you in them. That's going to be the next step. I'm clipping these off. If a hinge lets go that far in, it's probably going to let go if you put it in 6 inches. So you're just adding more glue and more messing up that foam in there, making for a chance that when you have the final finish, you're going to have a little ripple there. Alright, so these are all clipped down now. We're ready to do the Dremel part of it. I don't know if you can see how much I've clipped off these hinges. It's the amount that goes into the elevators and flaps. Now you can see they're kind of bright and shiny. This is the tool parting wheel. I'm just going to use to put some scratches in it. The idea with these scratches is so you get a little bit better grip. The epoxy will tend to get a better grip. Now after I oiled these hinges, I went through and cleaned them off with acetone too. You don't want to get any of these scratches up by the barrel, just further down the line. And the scratches go side to side. It gives them a little bit of groove for that epoxy to drop into. They're a lot stronger and definitely lighter. Let's see if you can see the finish on this. If you can see the grooves, I don't know. They've got all little scratches on them now. The one that isn't done is real shiny. So we're going to reflect the light off this. Well, you can see that's a shiny one, and this one has 100 little grooves on it. And we'll do that to all the hinges. Make sure they're all nice and free now. They should be really nice and free floating once that oil, Teflon oil, gets in there. tool to put that edge on there. Final sand it out with a block with 320. The purpose of this 60-foot plywood is to give us something nice and solid to connect the horn to the elevator with, without putting a giant block of hardwood in here, or you sure don't want to put that horn in there and just in a chunk of soft balsa. Now if you get a block, you can true this up nice. Get that first edge on the 64th a nice fit, because that's going to be your guideline now for the next pieces. Okay, now that 64th is sanded right in there. Now what we're going to do is take the horn, mark off where the horn is going to sit here, because we're going to want a little slot right in the middle for the old horn. Okay, now I've marked up that little slot where we're going to have the horn. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is take a piece of balsa wood. Let's see if we can get a close-up on this. I don't know if we can. I'm going to put the wood end grain. The grain of this wood is going end grain, top and bottom of this slot, so there's a slot for that horn. Then the back piece, the grain can go this way, but right on top of that horn, super important that you have the wood end grain. Good old hot stuff all kicked over here. Okay, now we've got one piece on there. Drop the horn in. You hold that with one hand. Take the other piece. Remember, we're talking end grain here. Okay, now just pull the horn out and you've got the perfect slot in there. Okay, we obviously want a nice tight fit. Now the piece in the back, the grain can go that way, front to back. And that end grain, that part that actually touches the horn being end grain, is what's going to give you the strength. We're just going to touch that with hot stuff. Try not to build up a big blob of hot stuff in there. Just going to touch it. And you can see what we have. We got a little horn, a little slot, and the horn fits right into that nice press fit. And we're going to cap that off with another piece of 64th plywood, and that's going to be our little piece to hold the horn in. You could go do this with the Dremel tool if you want, but I'll try to get most of this off with a brand new razor, just so I'll be grinding up less dust here and be making less of a mess. I've seen a lot of different ways to mount horns, some good, some mediocre, but this way I know works. I know you won't have any trouble with it. There's little diagrams in the Pro Stun Products catalog. If you ever need a diagram, just look at one of the catalogs. Okay, now we've got that piece there. I'm going to grind this down, obviously, the next step. with the block. If you do it in layers, as you add a piece, it's real easy to do. And you'll see it'll come out, it'll just blend right into the final finish. Really nice. That end grain balsa is the trick. That's what lets you keep it down to a minimum weight, a real minimum weight. Some people use light ply, that's a good approach too. Now before we seal this up, just want to touch that end grain wood. Just the slightest touch of CA in there will make that like a rock. And of course I want to cap this off with my other piece of plywood, which I've already cut up. So we got a little sandwich of 64th plywood with balsa right in between. The balsa is the same thickness as the horn, so there's no problem. You don't have to worry about maintaining some kind of hole. You don't have to drill a hole in there. It's a real nice, neat way to do it. You grind that final edge off. Block sanding that sucker out. You can get all your angles in there at this time. Let's hope one of the things you do actually pick up from this video, if you're a relatively new guy, is to use a block whenever possible. Block sanding will get you right up there with the experts in a hurry. Now you can see what a nice press fit that is. It even holds the horn. Okay, now you know you're going to have to take and put a little bit of a slot in this end to allow that horn to get in and out, because we're going to be assembling this and disassembling it every couple minutes while we're doing the hinging. So we want to get that slot in there. Nothing worse than dull razor blades. Okay. And of course we want to get that to the point where we can push it all the way down. That's fine. Now our fillet, if we manage to make it out of foam later, we'll put a piece of 64th plywood on the inside of that, and we'll have one nice joint that will not be subject to changing. Every time you run a piece of sandpaper in there, balsa, you get that grain and it looks ugly in the fillets. Again, I don't think this is one of the things they're never even going to see in appearance judging, but believe me, the other expert flyers are going to see it. So it depends who you're trying to please. If you just want to get the maximum points with the minimum work, probably don't have to do this. But if you're looking for that ultimate pursuit of perfection, I certainly think I'm constantly looking for that, even though I know I'll never find it. Maybe this is a little time consuming to watch on a video, but this is an important part. If you ever built a plane that was tail heavy, this is probably one of the reasons why. You didn't have the horns in right. Added a lot of weight with extra weight back by the tail. Now, even though that's sanded in real nice, once we get that nice, just like we did in the tail in the center, get a paper towel. We want to stiffen up this wood at the edge. Just lay a coat of CA right along the 1/4 inch is all we need. Quarter inch is plenty. Little paper towel and just wipe it off. That hardens up the wood right in that area where it attaches. Another approach is to put a little piece of fiberglass about this thickness along the edge. Double silk span is another way. We might even double silk span this just for safety's sake. And the day you go to fly in the wind, you go for that Walker fly-off and the wind is howling like it was in Lincoln, you'd be glad that piece is on there. Okay. This is just going to finish one side now. I'll do the other side off video to save tape. I'm sure you're getting bored watching this kind of stuff, but try to pick up whatever information you can from it. This kind of information is not available in colleges, only from the School of Hard Knocks, Stunt Hard Knocks. How original. Now, you really do want, and one of the obligations you have is when you pass these videos around, let's get some of these other people, hopefully get some other people that are interested in contributing some video footage so we can share some of these ideas. I'm sure these are not the only set of ideas that are usable. Okay, that guy's finished. We've got a nice little horn mount. Horn can just slide right in and out, and we will be sliding it in and out. We'll do the other one and then we're ready to cut the hinge pockets. Okay, what I want to do now is just show you how much I've got done. I put those little hinge pockets in for the hinges. Kind of drop these in just to see if we get a little test fit here. One of the tricks I found is don't make these hinge pockets any bigger than they have to be. If you make them gigantic, you're just making yourself extra work sanding and cleaning them out between coats of dope. And a little tool just grinds them right out in a matter of seconds, really. Now we've already established a point on this where we have those little extra pockets of wood in the stab, so these should line right up when we go to put those hinge pockets in the stab. Remember, the reason for not making this hinge longer, if you leave the hinge full, so it goes in and pushes the foam and bellies up the foam because you've got more material in there. And usually after you get done with all your dope shrinking out and buffing out, you're looking, there's a little, looks like a little ripple there. I've seen that in a lot of the old planes I had with old technology. Alright, we're ready to just take the old hinge sliding tool, which it looks like a devil's tongue, and just get on with, we're going to do this scientifically, line them up to make sure we got the right one. Yeah, we're in good shape. Right in the middle of everything. Now remember, we should be going right into the old, those little pieces of wood that we left right in place. I haven't sanded the glass out yet. That'll be tomorrow's job. In fact, we're going to pack this in soon for today. Definitely getting late. And tomorrow we'll try to set the horn up with a little brace. Now you notice I didn't do the tips. I never do the tips until the thing is all hinged up and horned and everything is set in place. Now what I've done, I put a dot on the bottom here and a dot up here so I know which elevator goes to which side. I won't start getting confused here. Not that I'm not confused enough as it is already. I've got one side in. It's a little bit pain in the ass the first time around, getting these guys lined up. Now this lets you get the horn right in the middle too. You want that horn right on the center line. The tail of this plane, the whole back end of the fuselage and everything is relatively thin, so we're not going to have a lot of room for slop. Okay, kind of a preliminary hinge. Yeah, they're nice and free. We're not going to have a lot up and down until I cut the slot for the horn. Okay, that establishes where our hinges are. We've got the same amount of material to remove on each side. Horn is pretty much in the middle. Glass will cure, and we're basically going to let this sit overnight now. Come back, sand this out, and dress up the hinge pocket. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, it took a few minutes and I added little blocks to that center fillet while that was dry. I'll get this done while I'm waiting for that glass to dry up. I got a few more minutes. Take care of this. And I just added these blocks to see if you can see that. This is going to be the center fillet. I'm just dressing it off. All that does is cancel out the hinge line. What this lets you do too is get a real accurate neutral alignment when you put the tail in the fuselage. You really are dealing in real accurate stuff then when you get this. When we get to this step, you'll be impressed how nice this works. And when you get to the point where you got to make that tail fillet, it'll already be made. It'll be home fuel. No, I just dressed that off, that's all. This is a template I made for this is going to be the tip block for the stabilizer. And I make a plywood piece off of the plans I drew before I made this. And this is the shape I'm going to use, and I've traced that out on. You can see this is the best piece of 3/8 I could find. You need 4 because we're going to make little clamshell tips, and 4 for the back. I've wrote all the notes, the stab, the thickness, the tip and cord dimensions on everything, so that if I want to duplicate this plane next year, I have a little plywood template. I can add this to my wall of things to do. So I'm going to let this sit here now. I haven't sanded the tail out yet. This is going to sit for 2 days now. Luckily tomorrow's a shop day, so that'll be 1 day I'm not even in the house. So I'll be seeing you in 2 days, and we'll work on this again. Right, today we're going to take and saw all these parts out on the Zona saw. I guess we could saw these out on Dremel even, be alright. And then tack glue them together. tip blocks ready to go now. The first step is going to be to tack glue them together, needless to say. A couple drops of hot stuff, and I'll dust these off. Now, because we're going to split these apart, I don't want to go crazy gluing them up too tight. That's going to be one block. I made these blocks just, I guess about a 1/16 of an inch bigger than they have to be oversized, so I can get the final hinge line shape on. Get them right down there, perfect. Now the whole idea of doing these two blocks, the way we've done them, rather than using one big piece, is we want to be able to separate them like clamshells and hollow them out. And even though that may sound fanatical to somebody to get that little bit of weight out of there, I think it's worth it. Of course, we want to line up the center line of this and the center line of the block real even before we tack this on. Real carefully. That's going to be priority one. Just get it nice and neat. We're going to carve the thing a little bit oversized. Now here we got a real unique situation is we can use the I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. We got enough wood on the leading and trailing edges here, we can probably glue it this way without having to use good old 5-minute epoxy. Let's see if this works. Just want to see if we can hold them on. I'm trying to line the center line of this up. Center line of the block joint with the center line of the elevator. Now let's go to the back. We got enough wood in the back. Notice I made these oversized. It'd be real nice if I can do this. Usually I glue this on with, say typically Elmer's glue or something, or will hold. I'll put one drop here and see what happens. Probably gonna melt all the foam instantly. Okay, now we got that block on. So obviously the next thing is to rough shape it, get it sanded in. Now we'll do the same thing with the stab too. I've got the tip blocks tack glued in place. Now what I want to do is get a nice straight hinge line on this. I have a sanding belt glued to a glass table. I gotta be careful, there's a lot of water in the shop now. This will just rough it right out. I found a nice little trick tack gluing these blocks on is spray the blocks with Kicker first. Then when you tack glue them with hot stuff, it doesn't go down and eat up the foam. After 40 years of modeling, I finally figured out how to do that. Okay, as soon as I eat into the hinge line, I'm done. Of course, that's good. The rest I can do with nice 320 on a block. I remember earlier in the video I said I always save the carving of the tips to last. And the reason is, now I want to put this horn in permanently, make a permanent mount for the horn. And when I'm all done, that'll space out the elevators, and I want to get this angle here just perfect. Really make a perfect angle that way. So the next step is going to be obviously to mount the horn. I've cut the little notch for the horn here. The horn centered, of course. Get a little notch, get in there. Make sure it's right on the center line. Okay, we got the horn right on the center line. We're going to have to brace that up a little bit now. Okay, I'm going to use a little carbon fiber. I'm going to run a little piece of carbon fiber over this just to make sure. It's the little strip. Of course, I'm going to do the other side too. I put this little piece of carbon fiber here to make up for the strength we're losing as the horn goes into the elevator. That'll make up for that little strength. I'm going to wrap one piece now right around the whole bottom and around the top just to beef it up. What I do is I put tape around where the wood ends and then carve this block. Here's one that isn't carved yet. I have to put tape around this. All that tape does is protect from going over into the wood. Because that sheeting is super thin by now. It's been sanded and everything. Okay, now we're ready to carve the other one. Now this is a nice little way of getting a final contour on your wingtips. Got to find the right core now, of course. If you lay that right in the core, it holds dead neutral. And now by having dead neutral, you can get this curve just perfect. Of course, you flip it over and do the other side. This allows you to get it right in. Now if you don't use the core, what you wind up doing a lot of times, you just have a little bit of up in there and you'll sand it flat and you'll have, where all four tips are completely different. And you have curved wingtips like that. So having it in a core at this point in time is a big advantage. Now another thing them cores let you do is to true up the hinge line. These hinges are not permanently installed yet, and I can kind of get a zero in on where that hinge line is. Nice and smooth, you can feel it's smooth. You don't have a step going up or down. Of course, then you can reverse to the other side. You have one smooth flow, so it should fit right back in a core when you're done. That flow should be perfect. Shouldn't be a little step or a little warp or anything. Now this looks like about all we're going to get done tonight. We'll pick this up tomorrow. We do have this in one piece though. We're going to have to hollow it out. Hollowing out the tips will be the next step. And then doing that fillet in there. That funny sound you hear in the background, I just had to shut it off. They just had an earthquake in San Francisco, and we had a flood down in my cellar here, so I don't know if we're going to get much done in the next couple days. And whenever you look at this video, just remember the San Francisco earthquake. The next thing I'm going to try to do is take this piece, which is the piece we have left over from the fillet. I want to trace it out so the center line is right on the center line of the horn. I placed in some little blocks. Let's see if you can see these up in the corners here. And now I'm going to have to trim this out so it drops right in here. So obviously I'll leave this all attached. Give me a nice pen here to make a line. Cut this a little bit oversized to begin with. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that line. This pen isn't working. $1 million operation like this and we can't get a pen that works. Anyway, I've got the amount that I need. I'll run over and cut this off on the jigsaw. These are the pieces we cut off. Now this piece we're going to have to just trim in until we get it just about the right shape. Then we're going to have to make a little notch for the horn to clear the horn as it goes through its range of motion. What I'm also going to do is cap both ends of this with 64th plywood, which will then match the other pieces of 64th plywood pretty nice, and we'll have our pre-finished, actually finished, we won't even have to tissue it. That worked out good on other planes I've done it to. Alright, so now I have, let's see if you can see this. I have this piece. I'm going to get a nice fit in here. I'm going to clear this out for the horn and tack glue that in, and then make my pieces 64th plywood around the edge. And that's going to be permanently in there, so when I set this tail in the body, that's going to help hold the elevators in neutral alignment and give it a lot more of a saddle for it to sit in. It's a nice way to do it. It's a lot easier than carving those blocks after the tail is in the plane. Boy, are they a pain in the ass to carve. Anybody's ever done that knows, especially if you're fussy. Putting those 64th plywood caps on here now. Okay, we have the plywood piece on both sides now. Just start to get a preliminary fit. Going to have to trim off the edges the same way we did before. Basically doing this the same way we did the horn inserts. One of the nice things about doing them this way is you'll always have a perfect finish in there because plywood doesn't have much of a grain. So you get that nice look like it's a pre-finished part. And the plywood will hold the clearance real good. You won't be, every time you run sandpaper in there, you won't wind up with a different clearance and an ugly hinge line. But what it really helps you do is get neutral just right. This is the first step, is to cut the notch for the horn, for the wire that's going to go through there. Now we're going to have to relieve this for the upright. That's step 2. I'll do that with a Zona saw. You just got to keep picking away at this until you get enough material out of there. And it's not that hard. It looks a lot harder than it is. And of course you got to relieve it for the little carbon fiber braces we have in there too, which we'll put a little push on now. This This also gives the horn a little bit of extra support, which sure can't hurt, that's for sure. Okay. Something, they canceled that World Series game because of the earthquake. Hard to believe. Okay. Okay, that's what she looks like, the final cutouts. We're ready to glue this on. Now what I've done is I've shoved 2 IBM cards in each side of the fillet. What that does, it holds it in place, number one. It's also getting me dead neutral here, and I can find dead neutral by just dropping this back down in the cores. By just putting this back in the core, I can find exactly where my neutral point is. Get a real good alignment on this. Spend a few minutes getting that alignment just right. And just tack this into position, see what it looks like. Keep checking the alignment. And pull out the cards and see what the alignment looks like. I'm going to have to relieve a little more off of that, but that's okay, we can do that. Now that piece is going to stay on there actually when we finish the tail. When we drop this in, this is going to help support the tail and keep us from getting a little crooked alignment. It gives the tail a nice little extra support. And these are about as light as you're going to carve wood since they're covered with 30-second sheet and they're the absolutely perfect airfoil shape. I'm going to sand this out and we're pretty much finished with that little trick. you can really work this area here and get a nice blend in. And boy, is this a lot easier doing it this way than when you have the rudder on the plane and a block in the way. You can really get the angle right here. Here's a real important step that I like to take, is I like to work the controls and see that both sides of the hinge shut exactly equally. This side is not too bad. You don't want one side shutting a split second before the other. Yeah, they're both shutting right. That looks pretty decent. It might get a little funny in a plane if one side seals up before the other. Now that looks pretty decent. Okay, we got that little piece finished. I put a couple of drops of Teflon oil down in the horn bushings, kind of work that in. Pull these surfaces off. The next step is going to be to hollow out the tips. Nice and light too. Since this is a tune-pipe video, we're putting on about 2 feet of John DeTavio fixing up one of the planes we just converted over. Enjoy this, baby. Fix that wheel pan.
Yeah, you go see
this. Outside mount pipe. We're just throwing this into the video free of charge. Yeah. Get back to building that plane, John.
Yeah. Ooh, that's proving all right. How about that stuff?
Got it fixed it right?
Yep. Now I'll put the tip stuff on it. Can't argue with that.
Okay, we're back to working on the tail. I guess the only thing left to do now, had a couple of days of working on another plane. Coming back to this project, we're going to have to hollow out all the tips now. That's the next thing. Trying to remember exactly where we were, but we get this guy apart. Pull him apart. I'm going to get a brand new razor blade. I guess this guy is all set for anybody that hasn't seen this. I give that a little workout. Okay, we're going to cut the tips apart and get out all the hinges next. We'll hollow out the tips and then we're going to start doping this guy up with nitrate dope. The finish is going to be basically the nitrate finish on the base, up through filler and then into Sig Light Coat Silver, and then we'll pick this up with whatever color we decide we're going to paint this guy. We haven't decided yet. It'll either be yellow or red. I'm going to get a brand new razor. split these off, which are just tack glued on. Now a good glue for doing this is Tower Hobbies makes a sandable aliphatic resin. It doesn't attack foam. I know I've got these tack glued on here pretty good, so I just split them off. The way I like to do this is I do one at a time. I don't know if you'll have success using that UFO, that hot stuff that doesn't attack foam. Well, you probably will. They say it doesn't attack foam. I don't have any of it here, so I can't really tell. Okay, here's the tip, and what we're going to do is split this down. Trying to be real careful now that I don't split the part. That's why I like to use a brand new razor. Even at that, it's difficult. Now you might be thinking, oh boy, this is getting crazy. We're hollowing out little things that don't matter. You save a little bit of weight here and there, here and there, here and there, it all adds up. And one of the goals I have for this plane is to have it weigh a little bit less than last year's plane. I've got it split apart. Now I'll just get in there with the Dremel tool, hollow some of that out. What's handy here is to have this sticky back sandpaper and just let it glue right to your finger. This is 80 grit, by the way. And you can use your finger to get on inside curves. And you might only get a couple grains out of the plane this way, but you go around the whole plane, you get a couple grains here and there, especially at the tail. And then you won't wind up with a lot of nose weight, hopefully. You won't wind up with that tremendous barbell effect, and most of all, you won't wind up with a vertical CG that's crazy. Okay, so here's one of ours that are all hollowed out. Here's one that we still have to. I'll hollow the rest of these out off camera. Now we got this on with that Tower sandable aliphatic. Just leave the tape drying now. Make sure we got some kind of decent alignment here. What I try to do now is press the sheeting down to get a nice, so I don't have to sand too much of the sheeting off when I get the final sanding on this guy. Okay, now we'll just do all the tips this way and I'll be ready for the sanding operation. Doing the stand tips now. I try to get most of the meat out with Dremel tool. I have that little fillet tool that I showed you before with that radius. Every time you got a little block like this, you can usually get out 2 or 3 grams, sometime more depending on how heavy the wood is. And it all adds up, especially when you're talking about the tail of the plane or the inside wing. And this is all dead weight. This is not weight that's doing you any good. It's not adding structure, not adding anything to the airplane except weight. And maybe a saving in time if you count the fact you could avoid an hour or so of carving here. Okay, now that's this piece here. Let's see if we can get a little close-up of it. That's going to actually fit on this. That's going to be the stab tip. And we got the other 2 guys here. I try to get some of this on camera. I got that Tower Hobbies white alphatic sandable resin. That's a nice way to do it. You get a nice glue joint when you're finished. Good. That's what our wing little stab tip looks like right now. One of the tricks when you glue this together is do it like I'm doing right now. Don't do this and then glue it together, otherwise you don't get the airfoil shape. Try to just hold it by the edges when you do the gluing together. Once you get it tack glued, and go around the edge a little bit. You don't want to get that flattened down. So there's our little hollow stab tip. Of course we'll glue that on with white alphatic right now. Okay, got all the tips hollowed out and carved out here. Everything's waiting to dry. We're going to put this aside to dry for a little while, and I'll make up some wing sheeting while I'm waiting. We'll be starting on the wing in a couple days. This has to dry before we sand it out, so next step is going to be do some wing sheeting. I'll vacuum this all up. Now step 1 is what we did, the same thing with the stabbing elevator, is get it marked so we can't confuse the cores. Some lines on it. This is just so we can get the same core back in the same half later on. Now this is a real unusual wing core. It has a tremendous amount of taper in it. So it's been a little more difficult than usual to figure out all the template shapes and core shapes, and I want to be real careful with this wing. I want to do the sheeting up. All I'm going to do, we're waiting for that stab to dry, all I'm going to do is join up some sheeting now to kill some time when my wife gets home from work. You'll notice how much taper this wing has in it. It has about double the normal amount of taper. So I want to lay out exactly how much wing sheeting I'm going to need. I'm going to go through my sheeting and pick out probably the 12 or 16 best pieces I have. I'll do that off camera. Just weigh them up with a gram scale and get the lightest, nicest ones. I'll do that right now. I've done, I've got all these sheets weighed according to the gram scale weight, and this is the weight of the pieces. These are 4-inch pieces. I've stacked them in order, the heaviest on one side. As we go down, they get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter, right to the lightest one. So obviously I want to take the lightest ones for the tail, which I've already done. These are the second lightest ones. They'll go on the inboard wing. The heaviest ones will go on the outboard wing when I'm making skins up. I'm also going to look through here and make sure I don't have any real twisted, ratty looking ones. Now I can see right now I'm not going to be able to do this in 3 pieces of 4-inch sheeting. I'm going to have to figure out how I want to do this with the 3rd piece. Maybe I'll put the 3rd joint down there. That'll be easiest. Now I'm doing 3 sheets at a time this time. Normally you can only do, you can do as many as 4 or 5 and do it real accurate. In fact, I'll do 4 at a time, and I can do each wing skin separately. Nah, I'll do 3. Make this easy for myself. Okay, I'm clamping it between, I described what this fixture was earlier on in the video. In case I forgot, this is a fixture Dave Midgley made that rides on pins and gets the sheeting dead even. So you get nice straight joints. It's made out of a material like Delrin, a plastic material. Once you have the sheeting lined up, drops down on pressure. The pins hold it in shape. You trim one edge like so. All you need is a sanding block. This helps you get perfect edges. You can do it by hand with a ruler, of course. Certainly nothing wrong with that, but this way almost guarantees you'll get perfect edges. And you put the plane out in the sun, you're not going to get them crazy kind of the little lines showing through the paint and stuff. Doing these wing skins, one of the good things to do is leave the dust on it. The dust will help kick off the hot stuff if you're going to use hot stuff. If you're going to use Sigmet or Ambroid, you want to vacuum the dust off. Now that should be one set of wing skins. We should get a reasonable alignment on this. Another thought to keep in mind is you want to have A-grain wood that you can bend for the leading edge. You don't want to use C-grain up around that leading edge, but if you do have C-grain, use it further back in the trailing edge. This piece doesn't really look super straight, so I'll try to keep this as a backup piece maybe. This one looks nice and straight. I got 2 nice ones. This one you can see looks like a little on the trashy side. Maybe I'll just avoid this one, make up some more. Now I want to lay these out straight on a table. And just run a real thin bead of hot stuff right down the seam, trying to keep it from gluing itself to the table. Take a paper towel, that comes in handy. Keep moving it little by little. Do about 6 inches at a time. Try to press the seam down, make sure it's not glued to the table. Bob Hunt's real good at doing this. I'm not. Just keep pressing it down. Watch, you get buildup on that. Now see here, we just had it stick to the table. One of the ways to keep it from sticking to the table is put wax paper down. Thanks to my wife for not getting me any wax paper this week. Well, we ran out. Thanks a lot, So. Appreciate the help. Now just watch you not rubbing in the part of the rag that the hot stuff accumulates on. Get rid of that right away. And one of the things you can do now is just flip it over. Now you've got a clean seam on this side. Now you can sand this side flat. Get me a piece of 320 here. The old faithful sanding block, which of course nobody put back the last time they used it. Now before I hot stuff the backside, I want to block sand in this seam. That little bit of extra dust will give me a real nice seam on one side. And don't forget, both sides of these seams have to be pretty straight. Otherwise you're going to get a ripple on the side that faces the foam or on the top side. Either side you don't want a ripple. I'm sanding against the grain, trying to get that seam to disappear. We'll do the old hot stuff down the seam trick if we can find the seam. This is 16 sheeting. All my wings are 16 sheeting. Some people like the thinner sheeting. I like 16. I think it's real important on my planes anyway. I want to see those nice airfoil shapes without ripples and wrinkles, and sometimes that thin sheeting looks kind of ripply after you get done finishing it. Now this is just one skin, one joint on one skin. I have to make 4 of these skins. I'm trying not to take too much footage up. Just get the idea across that these skins should be block sanded with 400, perfectly smooth before you ever even start thinking about putting the wing together. Okay, now we know we got to add the last piece there. Vacuum some of this stuff on and on. When I do sheeting, I try to vacuum up as much as possible because you really do breathe in. Sanding with 400 paper, you can really breathe in a tremendous amount of this garbage. It's really not good for you either. balsa forest growing in my lungs by now. 30 years of this stuff. Get the table cleaned up. And again, a glass table is nice to work on. This is just a piece of sheet glass that used to be a storm door. And it's on top of a hollow door. Not an expensive thing, that's for sure. This certainly isn't the only way to do these seams. There's a lot of other ways. I try to show some of them in the segment technique on tail. This is probably the quickest way. Give the sheeting a little move every now and then. I've glued them right to the table. A little embarrassing if one happens while I'm doing video too. Alright, I guess we can do the rest of this sheeting preparation off camera. This is just wing skin preparation while we're waiting for the stab tips to dry. I'm going to have to add a little piece I can see in the wing here. Because the core is a little bit larger than the sheeting. Okay, so I'm going to have to add a little piece back here. What I try to do now is look around on the sheeting. Now this is all sanded smooth. I try to pick up any bad spots. There's a bad spot right here. A little flaw in the wood. So we'll use this for the glue side then. We'll lay out the wing on this. We want the grain parallel to the leading edge of the wing. Just give it a mark. Yeah, see, this way I can avoid, completely avoid the whole idea of having okay. I avoid that bad spot this way. I can shove it all up on the core that way. So I'll make note here that glue this side. I'll give this a little trim, and I'll save this sheeting. I know I'm going to need a little piece for back here, so I can conveniently just use this. Save balsa wood that way. And with the way balsa wood's getting impossible to get, maybe this will be alright. And I'll glue that little piece on there. Let's see if we have enough. Oh yeah. Okay. Now I finished this up, being this is the good side. I put a super finish on this side with 400 paper before I even glue this to the wing. And this will be one skin done. I'll make the other 3 off camera, and that'll probably be it. These take about an hour a piece to make. What I've done off camera is take these over to the grain scale and get the 2 heaviest ones for the outside wing. Make sure I have equal sides. The 2 lightest ones, and I want the nicest ones on the top. So I'm just playing musical chairs here, trying to figure out which ones have the nicest, straightest grain in them. I got all 4 of the skins made. I'm going to work on a tail for a while. That tail should be dry by now, so we don't get this video too much out of context. So all I really did while that tail was drying was join up the wing skins. So we're a little bit ahead on that now. Put this guy back in the core. I got my 4 skins made up and sanded out, block sanded out with 400. The gear clips will be the next step. I'll put the gear clips in this for the wing, the landing gear. Alright, we'll get back to the tail. Now what I did, I took some masking tape, taped a piece of sandpaper down to the glass. I'm getting all my edges trued here. Kind of a final sanding. I'm going to blend these wingtips in. These should be pretty close from the initial sanding before we hollow these out, but good space to put a little final touch on them. Any straight edges you can get this way. Get all the edges nice and straight. Now one thing that'll be real handy in doing is establishing the hinge lines. Get all little angles sanded in this way. Real nice little tip if you never used it before. And when you blend this in, you want to be real careful. This sheeting is really thin here, so you want to just take the minimum amount till it feels nice and smooth. Don't want to get carried away here taking too much off and thinning it all down, otherwise you get ripples toward the end here. And a nice set of tips, nice blend here, and all true straight edges. And I prefer to do this definitely with a sanding block. constantly check that you're not getting too thin here. And if you get real thin, one of the things you should do is put a coat of real thick dope on here. Just in that joint area, so you keep that joint from rippling up. Keep moving the sandpaper on the block. You can tell a good glue joint when you have just a razor fine line, when you don't have a big gap in between. Nice glue fits. When you see some people's ships in raw wood, they really look beautiful. They're beautiful works of art. Some people don't build that good, but yet they fill it in with a lot of filler and DAP and things to make it better. I like to build where they look nice even when they're in wood. I got to keep checking this now. Okay, we got one done. We'll go on to the next one. Now we're going to base out all the wood in this with nitrate SIG. The reason we're using nitrate, it's a little bit lighter than butyrate, and it's going to stick the tissue down a whole lot better. You'll find it's a lot easier to sand. Now you can't finish a plane in nitrate. You have to put either butyrate, or epoxy, or something on top of it to keep it fuel proof. This is not fuel proof. But it'll save you a lot of sanding, it'll save you a lot of work if you never used nitrate before. It's a lot nicer to work with than butyrate. And one thing I always do is I mix my coffee cans and I mark them what the hell is on them. The thinner we'll be using for the whole finish is 3608S. That's a low penetrating, relatively fast drying thinner. The first coat, by the way, this stuff really smells good. You like getting high on nitrate dope. Get the tail out of here. Mix up a little batch of this. I start with about 50-50 for the first coat. Now there's a little trick we're going to do on this tail, just because we're using that real thin sheeting, which I normally don't use. I want to get a coat of full strength nitrate on those areas where there might be a joint, because that's where the wood will be the thinnest. So the first thing I'm going to do, get out a striping brush. If you've never seen the Noble videos, it tells you all about striping brushes. And I got a whole box of them here. This is a striping brush. It has relatively long hairs, and it'll get a nice band of dope down. This is not a striping brush, this is just for putting material on. So I've got all different ones in here. I'll keep one for just using nitrate now. Try to find one that's relatively clean here. This guy here don't look too bad. You can buy these in an artist supply store, or you can buy them from Pro Stun Products. Doesn't matter, they're not too expensive. The trick is to get the ones with the long hairs. Don't get the ones with the short hairs. Don't take a big brush. Yeah, I'll try a big one for today. And this is full strength. And I'm only going to do the edges and joints where the foam might be real thin. An example of that is going to be right along here. I can tell that this is going to be a problem. This is always where you'll see the seam pop through, so we'll get a coat of, this is full strength, no thinner. Right on there, just hope to seal up the wood, at least seal up the joint. It's a nice little trick to do on anything, actually. We'll do all little edges with this, where the one sheet joins another sheet. Then I'll add roughly 50% thinner. I don't even measure it. Just roughly 50% thinner into this nitrate. We give this tail about 3 coats of nitrate, and then we'll tissue it down. Double tissue the middle. It'll strengthen up the center a little bit. You'll notice when a dope is full strength like this, it doesn't really penetrate well, it doesn't go on well. It's thick and glommy. There's a thin spot I know down here. you stick with 3608S thinner through the whole finish, you'll probably be real satisfied. If you don't put 3608S thinner in, you're probably going to be real unhappy. You're going to wind up with something that you didn't have to have, some extra little surprise somewhere in the finish. This you can buy in body shop supply houses. It's not expensive or hard to find or anything like that. Any place that sells body shop supplies is going to have this. Okay, next thing we got to do is look through our little bag of tricks here and find a brush, an appropriate brush. We don't need a striping brush now, we need a regular doping brush. Let's clean up this brush. We'll keep this guy for nitrate dope now. I want to find a normal brush. I don't know if we're going to have any clean ones in here. This one don't look too bad. Good idea while you're doing this to get a fan going too. Smelly stuff. What we'll do now, just pull this apart. Now if you've already installed the hinges permanently, of course you're going to have all that fun of sanding in between the hinges. If you do it this way, there's some pluses and minuses of doing it each way. But for now, this is the way we're going to do this ship. Try to get most of this finish on here. And we'll just brush away. Try not to get that first coat too thick. Too much thinner is going to ripple up the sheeting. We just want to lay it on there, get it nice. Doesn't matter if you get a couple little fingerprints in it or anything. It's a good idea to always have extra brushes around. The ones you use in nitrate dope, just use them in nitrate dope only. That's a nice little trick. Keep a brush just for filler, a nice, say a 5/8, a half-inch brush just for doing your filler coats. And then put that first coat on. I sure don't want to soak it. Just want to get that first coat on. Okay, then we'll do the rest of it off camera here just to save some film. Everything's going to have 3 coats of this on before we do the tissue. Probably the next thing you'll see is we'll dust sand this out and then put the tissue on. Okay, that about finishes it up for today. We got our 2 coats drying here. We'll let that dry overnight and we'll work on that tomorrow. The first coat has been dry. So all I'm doing now is dusting this off. see if you can see the edges. I'll give this a second coat. Now that's about the amount of sanding I normally do between coats on this. Just pick up the hot edges. Now that that coat is dry, we can give this a third sanding. Give this a third coat, we'll be ready for some tissue. All this really does is pick up the little high spots in the wood. The wood swells when you first dope it, and this knocks all the edges back down. Each time you do apply dope to it, it's going to swell the wood a little more and it's going to get all fuzzy and rough. So if we just keep knocking it down, we'll have a nice base for our real final finish. I usually do about 3 coats before I actually put the tissue on. It helps fill in the grain a little bit too. 3 should be enough with nitrate. About 50-50 with the thinner. Wouldn't be a bad idea to get a little bit of extra dope around the middle where the fiberglass ends here, because that's where we're going to have our step down, where we go from glass to no glass on the finish. Today I'm going to try to get the tissue on this. I'm just filling in a couple of the little spots that I had dings in from handling it. Filled them in with DAP. And we'll try to get the tissue on this today, assuming everything's going to go right here. This is just DAP that I'm filling in all little spots that I stuck my fingernail in while I was sanding this out, and just not perfectly smooth. Half of the trick of getting a nice finish is get everything really perfectly smooth and sanded down with 400. really flawlessly before you even put the dope on. Then you don't have a lot of filler and a lot of DAP and a lot of all the other things that are a pain in the neck when you put the plane out in the sun and you see little paint lines come through and stuff. Now this stuff has 3 coats of nitrate that have all been dried out about a day or so between coats. I've been real careful about getting all the corners and edges. Especially in the hinge line, I want to get that really perfectly smooth before I go ahead with this. And in these corners, it always seems like it's a nuisance to get in there. And what I do with these corners is get in there with the knife and make a corner again. The finish all builds up. It's important too to get a little radius on everything before you start. It's even doubly important on this plane because we're going to try to put a little less clear on than we normally do, because we won't be wiping this plane off as much as a typical normal ship where you have to wipe it off after every flight. Typically I only been wiping the tune pipe planes off at the end of the day and using about 1 paper towel, so I don't think there's going to be a lot of need to put on that whole extra 1.5 quart of clear. I think I can get away with a lot less clear and still have a nice finish. It won't wear out and deteriorate as quick either. Keep in mind, a lot of these little detail things that you do are not going to get you any more appearance points. From a points point of view, they're really not worth it. They're only worth it from a workmanship point of view. And from a point of view that there are people in the world that do appreciate good work, even if they never do get to be the judge at the Nationals or whatever. In fact, last year we had RC people judging the plane. I judged the pylon racing with Billy Werwich. We judged the appearance at the pylon racing, and I think they were a little annoyed that we were very critical of their airplanes, but their airplanes are done with epoxy, almost every one, and I don't think they put the time into the finishing of them. They take a beating a lot more than our planes do, so let's be fair about it. Good workmanship always pays. You'll notice when you do nice workmanship too, you go to sleep at night and you sleep better. Always a good idea to clip your fingernails before you start doing work like this. If you look at my fingernails, they're pretty well chewed up from working in a machine shop. But you don't want any long fingernails. I remember my friend Lou Dutcha, he had a really nicely finished plane, and right at the very point where you don't want to get a finger mark in it, wound up getting a big fingernail gouge in it. We immediately reached for the little fingernail clipper and got rid of that problem. Long fingernails belong on women, not model plane builders. Okay, we're about ready to start the tissue into this. I've been saying that for 2 days, but I'm just kidding. Trick is you got to be real fussy before you actually even start the tissue, and being fussy is the whole trick. Alright, I'm going to set up to do the tissue now. First thing I do is get the glass table perfectly clean. Acetone is good for doing this. Get the table good and clean, no dust, no little particles of hot stuff. They're going to poke their way up through the finish. We got our nitrate dope that we mixed. size is roughly 50-50. We got the same brush that has all nitrate on it. 00 silk span. I'll do an elevator first. And what I do is lay out the tissue. Get a brand new razor blade. There's no substitute for just using new razor blades on this stuff. One of these elevators, it's perfectly sanded out. And we're going to need 1, 2. Well, what I use is Windex to wet down the tissue. Just dampen up the tissue a little bit. Water works good. A little atomizer works good. Take a towel and just blot down the tissue. Now what I'm doing is I've already got 1/2 of this silk span already off camera. I'm going over the middle so that I have double tissue from here to here. This is double tissue. This piece goes over this middle, this piece goes over here. So actually in the middle we have double glass and double tissue. And we're relying on that for the strength rather than the just having some kind of a piece of wood spar or whatever. We're relying on that glass cloth and double tissue for the strength. Double tissue in the middle, straight across. If you were to finish the plane later on and not be able to do this, of course, well, I don't know that you'd lose a lot of strength that way, and you'd certainly pick up some weight. Let's get this, try to just shake it on here. Notice that that goes way past the middle, the other side, which is already done. I did some of this off camera because I was on the phone with a customer. And we were bad-mouthing all the stunt flyers in the world, and we both agreed that we were the only two guys in the world that knew anything about stunt, and I wasn't so sure about him, and he wasn't so sure about me, but that's a typical opinion in the world of stunt. Okay, but back to finishing anyway. This is double tissued. I go right over the fillet. That builds up a little strength and gives you a little material to sand down through on the fillet. What I'll do after this is finished is put on at least 3 more coats of clear nitrate before I even hit it with 400 paper. I'll sand it all down with 400 and then look at how much material I have on here and work on making some talc filler. Always use brand new razor blades. If you use these even if they're 1 day old, it seems like they just tear the tissue up. When they're brand new, they'll just slice it like you slice your finger. Before you cut the tip, you can kind of pull down the wet tissue along the tip. Remember, it's not soaking wet, it's just damp. This is 00 tissue, of course. You can kind of rub this down with your hand like so. Rub down the edges. Getting on the second coat of dope here. I'll try to get 3 coats all together. As you're doping, it's a good idea to rub the edges down. Try to get all the little joints out. Squeeze down all the wrinkles, it sure couldn't hurt. I try to get a little extra material in by the middle here where the glass begins and ends. That'll make it a little stronger, a little easier to sand out. We may get the second coat. I like to let this dry overnight before I put the second coat on. One thing good about today, we're not missing a flying day working here. Boy, is it lousy out there. It's raining like a son of a gun. It's good old Jersey weather.